Alright, so this is video 2 in my series that I'm doing for my local game store here. I'm painting a Stormcast Eternal Vindictor at this point, and this I think is one of, it's not like it's not exactly a store exclusive, but it's the models that Games Workshop sent them to give out to customers. And so we decided, well, I had asked if they wanted to do a painting course. So the first thing I did was I spray painted the entire model black, and the easy part of this is dry brushing a silver color over top of that. And in this particular case, I'm just using regular old lead belcher. And what this does is it leaves that black in the recesses, and it actually starts your shading process. So on this particular color scheme, I use this for my actual Stormcast Eternals that I have that I painted my army from when I bought Dominion. And it's a fairly simple paint scheme. It's I think it's called Hallowed Knights or something like that. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually using Morn Fang Brown for any of the leather straps, any belts, and I'm also basing the I don't know what it's called. It's not exactly a purity seal, but the little thing. I'll look it up later. For some reason, the words have left me. Anyway, the brown base coat on this is a good starter before you throw some. I usually use the carapace, like the bone color from Reaper, or you could use Shop de Bone. There's many different colors that you can actually use. So as I said here, all of the belts, including the belt on his front here, and any pouches that are on any of the model, which I don't think this guy has any pouches, if I remember correctly. We'll see in a moment as I turn him around. But I also did the sword scabbard. And this is kind of a side-by-side comparison of how it looks now and how it's going to look at the end. Now for my guys, I did make a couple of changes to the scheme, and I also dry brushed some mud onto their feet to make them look like they've been slogging through the swamp, like in the Dominion box, really. And I also used the Grey Knight steel on the shield there, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But I really like this color scheme. I enjoy the way it looks, and it's very simple to do. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, and it's a very nice. It pops really well when you're on the battlefield. This part is admittedly the part that everyone dreads, and as you've seen in my other videos, especially the one getting the gold, as I was doing the Zangor Shaman, and all of my 1,000 Suns, I did all the gold on those as well. This is the same way that I did all of them. I just paint the gold by hand. It's not as bad as everybody makes it out to be, honestly. As long as you're just careful and you just take your time with what you're doing, it'll turn out fine. No issues. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up this gold here, and then when I'm done with the gold, I go back and I do the undersuit in black. And I'm using Abaddon black for this because, or Abaddon black, however you pronounce it. Anyway, I'm using that black because it's kind of shiny, and I kind of want it to look almost leatherish at the end. I did not opt to do any highlighting on these either. I will probably go back and do so just because I have issues with that. But what you're seeing here is the next step, and that is me putting some Mephiston red on the haft of the spear. And the reason why I'm using Mephiston is because it actually darkens down because of the black undercoat there, the black primer. It darkens down a little bit, and it makes it look a little more crimson when it's dry. And I really like the look of that. So I I kind of wanted at least one color on the models to pop a little bit more and to be a stark contrast to that silver and gold. So I decided to complement that with red. And I think it turns out pretty well. It actually looks really good on the model when you look at, when you see the scheme at the very end, the red really kind of stands out a bit. So here is your in progress shot of the gold done and the spear done as well. Now here, unfortunately I had some camera issues, but I hit all of the dirt with ebony flesh, and that's Reaper color, but you could take any sort of dark brown and do that. The next step, of course, is to do the stones. Now, the stones, I'm using a universal color. This color, I have used the heck out of it. It's Wolf Gray from Reaper, and it looks really bright when it goes on, but once it dries, it actually looks a lot darker than it originally goes on. So, and it takes very well to a wash, and I am going to wash this model as well. So in this step, I'm using Heartwood Brown to dry brush all of the dirt areas and some of the edges of the stone to make it look like the stones are a little dirty as well. And this Heartwood Brown just kind of takes some of that edge off of that dark brown. Now I am using here, and unfortunately I did have a bit of a mishap. I apparently did not let the paint dry enough, but I put an oil wash. I have a pre-mixed oil wash that I have been using. And unfortunately, as you can see on the panel there on the side, it ate some of the paint away, which is fine. I went back and fixed it and just called it a highlight, and there's some there as well. Apparently there were a couple of places that needed a little more time to dry, and that's my fault. I jumped the gun on it, and I may have put a little bit too much pressure on there as well. So I went a little more light-handed with it from here on out, just to try and not do any more damage. But the thing is, even with that damage, it's actually not so bad. Even if you left it, I mean, you could just make it look like damage to the armor. If you just put a little bit of a white on the edges of the metal, you can make it look like it's damage. Now, on this step here, I actually started painting the base rim before I went back and put on the tufts, and before I did the shield with the Grey Knight steel, and did a little bit of glazing on the upper areas. So as you can see here, this is Grey Knight steel, and I can't lie, I love Grey Knight steel. I'm a big fan of the color blue. I always have been. But Grey Knight steel looks really, really nice, and it's a good stark contrast when you're doing oil washing. So even on my other models, I washed them first. I let that dry, and then I put the Grey Knight steel over top of that to make it look sort of set off from the rest of the model. It actually kind of pops a little bit. It makes it look a little brighter than the rest of the model does. So when you're using oil washes, obviously it's going to be kind of a grim dark color scheme. And as you can see here, I've got some very, very thin down Grey Knight steel, and I'm kind of glazing in lightning flashes on these things. Now, the way I resolved this in my head is that these guys are obviously lightning based, and when they hit the ground in a strike of lightning. And what I'm doing here is just putting that Grey Knight steel on very, very thin with some glazing medium and some water. And what that does is it adds just a bright sheen to part of the metal, which to me, I mean, if you look at it right, it looks like a lightning flash. So that's my reasoning for it. Anyway, so here's the final, the final model. It's a quick and dirty job, but it looks good. So I appreciate everyone watching, and please like and subscribe. Join me on Patreon if you'd like, and much appreciated. Thank you all.